Diamond, Diamond.
A precious gem of the most valuable kind. When pure, it is clear.
Diamond, Diamond.
A family name bringing traditions of love, hard work, and moral values.
This is the Diamond Education Podcast with my mom and dad, Jon and Kellee, England.
All right. Welcome to the Diamond Education Podcast. We are your hosts, Jon and Kellee, England. And we are here helping you find the most valuable education for your child.
We want to welcome today Kimberly Maycock. Kimberly Maycock is passionate about empowering families to make home education work for them. Her journey as a homeschooling mom of two boys has been a crash course in productivity, priorities, and grace, and she loves sharing her best lessons learned from this process. Kim co-founded the YouTube channel Love-Centered Learning, helped start the Discovery Tree Co-op. She has also served as a content creator for Education Opportunity for Every Child and homeschool advocate for Education Empowerment Hub. Kim is a registered nurse of 15 years, currently employed as a care coordination director for Haven Health Group. Personal pursuits include singing and keys in the band, Proclaim. She's excited to help you unlock new levels of fulfillment in your home education journey. Thank you. We're excited to have you on the show, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're going to start off with a very hard-hitting question. What is education, Kim?
Okay, it's a big one. I believe that it is the active pursuit of truth. And it can come in lots of different forms. And it's also a progression in our lives of both knowledge and skills. Yeah.
I love that. I found as I've done research on education, it is like finding truth, like finding those principles and
and just applying them.
Everything you read and learn. So
Well, yeah, and I think it's also that idea of that constant growth, right? Like education doesn't just happen in a classroom, in such a formal setting and stuff like that. But there's that, like you said, that constant search for truth because, as fallible human beings, we don't always find that, we just got to kind of get closer and closer to it as we grow and progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is your philosophy for educating your children?
Okay, so I read a book that's one of my favorites. It's called Teaching from Rest by Sarah McKenzie. Have you read this, Kellee?
Yes,
yeah.
She's one of my favorite. I love her. Yes.
Okay. So I would say my philosophy is kind of embodied in this, not that I live it perfectly or even closely, but I really try to. Basically, the concept is that we put these ideas and experiences in front of our children, and then we let their spirits grasp onto those things that awaken in them whatever they were called to do in life. There's a quote in here by Plutarch that says, "The mind is not a vessel that needs filling, but wood that needs igniting." And so just kind of giving our children as many opportunities as we can to ignite those things that are lying dormant in their spirits already. So for me, that looks like I'm not an unschooler. I have great respect for that philosophy, but I'm too much of a control freak for that to work for me. I'm too much of a scheduled person and a to-do list person. And I love that there's so many different ways. But so consistency with core subjects is really important for me, knowing that they're getting reading, writing, and math on a consistent basis. And I do that one-on-one because those subjects in particular, children are at such varying levels. It's hard to teach that in a group setting. Yeah. And so that's something that I've held on to through whatever programs we've been a part of, like reading, writing, math. I get to do that one-on-one with my kids. Yeah. But also, I love bringing in group classes, whether it's extracurriculars or co-ops, or we use private schools and charter schools made for homeschoolers to teach those other subjects that are better in a group setting or that can be effective in a group setting, like science and history, and just learning those facts, and maybe art and creative group learning is a big part of my philosophy or our approach.
So what you're saying is that, because all the people always tell me that homeschoolers, they just never get socialization. So you're
no, we're total loners and losers and
and awkward, right? We're just socially awkward all of the time.
Well, I went to public school my entire I guess I did private school a little bit when I was growing up, and I never met an awkward person in public school. So it's totally valid when people say that.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was listening to, I think it was to another podcast, and the person said, well, they'll only be weird if you're weird. So,
yeah.
So you get that
absolutely.
in both settings, right? Like,
but social is, our community, our homeschool community is a big part of our philosophy. It's a part of our education, because I think our children should be able to learn from other sources than ourselves, because they're not always going to be in our homes, and to be able to learn from mentors and other families and peers and older children and younger children, like just that more natural community setting, I believe creates a more wholehearted socialization than the artificial, like forced to be with 30 kids that are your same age, all for 7 hours a day, because that's not realistic. That's not how the world works. Like, I've never been in a setting like that outside of public school.
Right.
And so I feel like the socialization that homeschoolers get, as long as you're actively pursuing it, of course, like there is the option to just stay home and not interact with people, but in going on outings or being involved in groups of people of varying ages, you get that more organic socialization. My kids can interact with old people, kids younger than themselves. They're not in this peer group only mindset that I think often happens in that more forced social setting. So
there was an interesting thing. So we listen sometimes to Andrew Poudois. He's the director. I don't know. He works for the Institute of Excellence for Writing and does some writing curriculum.
IEW?
IEW, exactly.
Yeah.
And they have a podcast, and he was on his podcast. He talked about when you have kids of different ages interacting with each other, they actually use more sophisticated language. But when you get them in the same age group, that's when they use their simplest form of language.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so just with language development and vocabulary development, and it goes both ways. The younger kids will use more sophisticated language with older kids too. And it's about that, probably about the same range that, our kids are apart in age, which is about 2 years. If they're about 2 years apart, you use a much more sophisticated language skill set when communicating. So
yeah. And I've seen it go both ways too, where in our co-op, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure, we had an age range of 5 to 14. And my kiddo was 5, and his best friend in the co-op is the 14-year-old.
Nice.
And just seeing the way that 14-year-old, who would normally be like, I'm too cool for school, like his emotional intelligence to be able to relate to a 5 and a 6-year-old on that level and make him feel like he's his best friend. Like, there's something to be said for that too. I mean, the academics is one thing, and then there's also this emotional intelligence component when you are in that more organic setting and allowing older children to mentor younger children and younger children to look up to those older children. That's just such a really beautiful part of this social piece.
Yeah. Well, and it gives them that leadership opportunity as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it will make them better parents and better leaders, and all that.
Yeah.
I'll let you ask the next one, since I jumped all over and started talking about different parts of it. So,
well, we kind of interrupted Kim. Did you have more you wanted to add?
Well, the only other thing that I would say that this book and my philosophy is centered on is on God, and being able to make God a part of my children's education. That I get to pray about what curriculum is going to be best for them. I get to pray about our schedule, and it's like a ever evolving thing, but God gets to be involved in that, and my children get a say. And so I love that if something's not working for them, that I can, it'll start to get sticky, and I'll be like, okay, so tell me about what's going on. Why is this so hard? Whereas those frustrations, if he was in a, public school setting, he may just hold those inside, and maybe something wouldn't be working for him, but the system is already so stressed, as Jon knows. It's not like you can cater to every individual child like a mother would be able to, and tapping into resources that are divine, that really know that child, is just a really beautiful thing. And it's a huge part of my philosophy with homeschool.
I love that, Kim. So what is your background in your family education journey?
So personally, like I mentioned, I actually went to 10 different public schools, but from the time of K through 12th. So I got a really wide range of educational experiences that way. I had a pretty good experience. I was very active in a lot of different, extracurriculars and things. And it was a good education. I went on and I became a registered nurse, and my career has been in nursing. And never planned on homeschooling. I was just going to toe the line of what I did. And, I turned out fine, whatever. My husband also, went to public school. But when my oldest was 4 and my youngest was 1, we were living in Arizona, and I was working full time in a corporate role for Haven Health Group. I had just gone full time when we moved down there, and I was like, I'll try it out. I had been doing part-time from home, and that had worked great. But I was like, we'll give this a try. And it was not the right fit. I was like, my kids they're at this daycare, and I'm missing them growing up. And like, I feel gypped because I want to be there. And I know not everyone has that option, but we did. And so a couple months after moving down there for that full-time position, I was like, sorry, this is not going to work. And so we phased out of that. And Gavin was doing the Waterford Upstart program. And I just loved watching him learn and grow. I would sit with him, and he would do the program. And I was like, wow. And pretty soon he was beyond the kindergarten mark. And I was like, oh, well, he would be starting kindergarten in about a year, but he's now at like kindergarten first grade level now at 4. And so I was like, thinking about how that would work logistically for him to be in a kindergarten classroom, and maybe the boredom that could lead to behaviors. And so initially it was like an academic reason that I wanted to try homeschooling him for kindergarten. And also a little bit selfish because I just loved watching him learn to read, and I didn't want to share him with anyone. And so, and my husband was very encouraging. He's like, yeah, you're already home. You're already going to be home at least until, Cooper would go to school. So we might as well try, and the rest is history, because I loved it and I found so much fulfillment in it. And it was way simpler than I ever thought it would be, and more beautiful and joyful. And so we've been doing it the entire time. We've supplemented with programs. He did go to like private preschool, and a private school that was for homeschoolers, and a charter school that was for homeschoolers, and co-ops and collaboratives. And so we've always supplemented with something, but we've homeschooled all the way through. And now my oldest is now almost 10, and my youngest is almost 7. And we just start a lifestyle now, and it's beautiful, and we love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that, Kim.
I always remember, and maybe you should tell this story, but because we're brand new homeschoolers, right? We just
Kim knows, she's supported me a few times on what do I do?
You're doing great. You guys are amazing.
No, this is our second year. So anyway, and each
year when the kids were leaving for school, you were always sad to have them leave the house, right?
Heart-wrenching.
That was
I wasn't. Well, Kim heard a different story. Apparently, I said something different to her one time. She must have me to repeat that day, because I was like, I don't remember that.
Well, it's funny the reactions you get from people when you tell them you homeschool, because some people, I don't know if they feel threatened or if they feel like you shouldn't be doing that. Like, how dare you do something different than the status quo? And I don't want to assign like intention to anybody, but it's funny. It's just funny to see people's reactions. But it was funny because Kellee, you're like, oh, you homeschool. You're like, yeah, I could never do that. In fact, I wish school was all year round. Like, I wish they didn't have summer break.
It must have been an awkward, I don't know. Because honestly, Kim, because my husband was a part of public education system. I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're in that mindset of,
this is the way you do it.
You know, so I always had this different view. And now we're on the it's funny to be on the other side of it now and be like,
you
why
probably
are
have
they
some
so awkward? So
yeah, well, and I don't think that we would go back.
Oh
either.
no.
Like it's been, I love it because I mean, I'm working from home now and you know, I get to teach math to my kids like before I start work, but I just have to go to the other room to do work. And so I love it because it builds our relationships and stuff like that just within the home. And
such a blessing.
It sounds like Kim and us, we didn't ever think, right, Kim, we'd ever do it.
Yeah.
And then we did it.
No, I was like
scared to death. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It was more like, what if my kid can't read? What if he?
Yeah, well, and society puts like, there's just such a weird skewed view about it, just in general, from people who, you know, don't understand it.
Yeah.
I remember, and I totally bought into that because when we moved back here to Utah from Arizona, and my husband's like, you should look into homeschooling. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to this local homeschool group. They do these activities and I'll just kind of scope it out, see how weird the people are or whatever. And I walked in, I was legitimately like, my bias just shocked me. Cause when I looked around and I saw all these like hip dressed moms and they were like, their kids were all like interacting and they were cute and cool. And like the moms like weren't wearing long dresses and like bonnets. Like, I don't know. I was shocked to see all these cool moms at homeschool. I was like, whoa, my whole world is turned upside down. And it's not that they had time to get ready for the day. You know, I think there's this idea that you won't have any time for yourself as a mom. And like, you have to be totally self-sacrificing. And so I think I was shocked to see that and also to live it and just see how much time there is when you're being more intentional with your time and you can shower and you can, you know, pursue the things you love. And it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a very fulfilled, abundant life. In fact, I feel like my life is more abundant with homeschool.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's one thing that we were kind of surprised by when we were homeschooled, when we began was, you know, hey, we got a lot of it done in a lot less time during the school day too. During the days that we were like officially homeschooling, right? Yeah. And so like there is that time to just hang out or read a book to the kids or whatever. And like when we get done with like the traditional like math or language arts programs. So
So would you say your kids are closer?
Yes, they're very close. It doesn't mean they don't fight, but it gives us lots of opportunities to work on like conflict resolution. You know, they have a lot more opportunities to work those kind of things out and to be, you know, we tell them all the time, we're like, you guys need to be best friends. And if there's ever a time where like you guys aren't treating each other like best friends, then we need to look at other social time. Because you were talking about social, like I feel like my kids get too much social almost because we've got a neighborhood full of kids. We've got all these groups we're in. And sometimes I'm like, you guys just need to hang out together. We just need family time, you know? And so we'll tell them, you know, family is first, it's the priority. And we have all these opportunities to work on these things. Whereas if they were away from each other all day with just their peers, then they would come to see each other as not a peer, but they're best friends. Like we're going to keep emphasizing that, you know, because they're their forever friend, you know?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some of the other success stories that you've had while homeschooling your children or even in the homeschool co-ops that you've been a part of?
Yeah. So, I mean, academically, it's been wonderful to see my children progress at the level that they were intended to. And that means they're ahead in some levels than they would be if they were with their peer groups. And while that's great, that's not the most important. I would say, like we were saying, the family closeness. My husband also works from home. And so him being able to step in and us just have time, the flexibility that we have to travel when we want to, or go on outings when all the kids are in school. And so it's like the museums are cleared out, has allowed for a lot more of those kind of opportunities without the frustrations of lines and crowds. And so that's a big part of it. And I love not having to rush every single morning, you know, and get out the door. And then when they come home, the homework, like we're able to get everything done by lunchtime. And then I have time to like work in the afternoon, or they can play Legos, or just kind of just having that more white space in our lives has been really beautiful. So I know that's not success stories. I guess those are just like,
I think they're success
things
stories.
of the lifestyle, just in general.
So I just finished actually reading a book called Unschooled by Carrie McDonald. I don't know if you've read that book, but
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Yeah. So, but she also talked about in the afternoon, you said they can just sit and play with Legos and use their imaginations, where it's this unstructured playtime, which when you look at psychological results for children, that's such an important opportunity for them to explore and, test limits and do all those things so that they can learn and grow and adjust their or explore their personalities and their likes and their dislikes and stuff like that, and how amazing I think that is. And so that was one of the points that she made in her book that I really, really appreciated, is that, because that's one of the things we've talked about, is we don't want our kids just scheduled out all of the time either. And this all gives us more time to let them just be free every once in a while from schedules.
And let's be honest, the soccer mom mentality stresses me out.
Yeah.
I'm one of those, are you sure you want to do soccer? I'm more of an introvert.
Really heavy. Yeah, it gets really heavy really fast. And so so it's nice to know that every day they are going to have a little bit of that space. And I think that it's in that space that they discover their genius, and they discover what they want to do in the boredom, or in that space where it's not structured. Then they're going to discover their life purpose, because I've got these budding engineers here because that's what they want to do, Legos, and so it's really cool that they have that. I don't remember having a lot of that. I was very, very scheduled, and that worked for me, but it makes it so I can't be an unschooler now. It works my brain, but I do appreciate them being able to have that time each day, for sure.
So Kim, I'm more like you. Jon keeps talking about unschooling one of our children. I don't know about that. That stresses me out because I need that child on a schedule.
Yeah, sometimes we need it for ourselves.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that I'm there. I keep reading about, I'm like, that sounds really cool. And then I look at what it is and it is. It really is. And I do feel that, like I said, we're just into year 2 of homeschooling our children, and it's not even all of our children, right? But we're 2 years in, and I do feel like we are becoming a lot more relaxed in just how we do it. I think at first we did expect them to be doing school for 7 hours a day and stuff like that, and
we were trying to.
We're trying
to put the public
home.
school within my home. So
no, that's very common. So with my YouTube channel, I've interviewed a lot of different homeschooling families, and that's really common when they go from public school to homeschool. It's a really hard transition because you think it has to be school at home, right?
Yeah, well, that's what we're taught is the right way to do school, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That because especially if you were public school, that's the only thing and that's the only way that they're going to succeed. And so it takes some time to kind of decompress from that. And one thing I would recommend, Kellee, because I am so like Jon, when I read about or I speak to an unschooler, I'm just that is so beautiful, and I want to capture pieces of that. And so I have scheduled an hour a day where we sort of unschool. It's our morning basket time. And she talks about that in here, where the things that you're oh, that would be nice, to read poetry or to, delve into the scriptures more, or just to read from a classic or have a discussion about whatever. We have our first hour of the day is our morning basket time. And it's kind of an unschooled little snippet before we get into the meat of our core learning. And that's been really, really precious.
Do you have a separate basket for each boy according to their interest? Or?
That's how I started, but now we just do it together, at the whiteboard. And we'll have discussions and delve into scripture and things that would normally go the wayside. She says, put those things first before you go into the day. And then you can feel just filling your cup and that love of learning and whatever before you dive into everything else. And that's been a really cool thing.
Yeah. One of the things I liked, actually, you shared that podcast with me yesterday where she and Andrew Poudois were on it. But she mentioned you're always going to learn new things about homeschooling, and then you're going to feel oh, I should do that. And then when you don't do it, you feel you're not doing everything you can or whatever. And so,
Yeah.
but her idea of like teaching from rest is, we'll do what we can. And just like God with the loaves and the fishes, like it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. And I will make up the rest, and like, yep, your loaves and fishes can maybe feed like 7 people, but I can feed 4,000 with that or 5,000 with that. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, and to add on to that, I love, because she talks about that in Teaching from Rest too. Be who you're supposed to be. If you're not the mom that's going to make sugar cube igloos, then don't be that.
Yeah, that's such the joy. Yeah, I'm much like I sit and relax and read, read aloud, and while they're playing Legos or while they're drawing, like that's. I'm not a project-based person, which is one reason I've had to supplement with programs, because I know that's really important, like especially for boys, that hands-on creativity. And I just know I'm not that person. And so it's been great because these programs have always supplemented with science specifically to do the experiments and the messy things and the things that I just don't really want to do. And that's okay.
That's all right. Because then you're teaching something that another parent doesn't want to do, right? So
that's awesome.
Going back to kind of like the success story question you had earlier, I would say one of the biggest success stories is that my kids want their kids homeschooled.
Nice.
And I feel like that's a little bit of a validation, because some days I'm like, I'm failing at this, or I've yelled at them, or like things aren't coming together. And I'm just like, would they rather be away from me, being taught by someone else? Like maybe they'd be better off. But like knowing that they continue to say, like, I want my kids homeschooled, just tells me like they're having a good enough experience that they would want to share it too, because again, when we are experiencing joy, we want to share it. And so I told them that I would homeschool their kids if their wife didn't want to.
Have you seen, I've seen these grandma groups and I love it. Well, I didn't. So before my mom passed away in October, she was actually helping homeschool too. And I'm like,
so special,
so fun. Like, I hope, like you, I'm like, I want to still be involved, because how great for those kids, to
that multi-generational experience.
And really this older generation, the wisdom they have to offer, and so much to offer, where we think, in our mind, we think we're retired, right? Like, which should we ever
still
really
so much to
retire?
give.
But, there's so much. So no, I love that, Kim.
So I'm putting it on the record, boys. If you ever watch this, my offer still stands. Grandma school.
Grandma school. I love that.
I love it so much. I'm going to be sad when I don't get to do it anymore. So
well, and this is just something I just thought about, but I mean, it does give that opportunity for more like interactions with extended family, right? Of like, hey,
so much more time.
Grandma's coming over. Great. You don't have to worry about school or whatever. Like we'll just pause school and go hang out with grandma and learn, crocheting or whatever it is from grandma or whatever, it's like, or there's cool things that you can learn.
Totally. And my sister, she's coming into town because her kids are on fall break for 2 weeks at the beginning of October. And we get to just spend the whole time with them, and they'll get to come to our groups with us. And it's just such a blessing. The lifestyle is so flexible and beautiful. I feel like what you feel like you might lose out in time, like for yourself, you gain in just life experience and family, and not having to rush around and be on someone else's schedule.
Yeah. And to be honest, I was worried when all my kids were going back to school, because I was like, what am I going to do? I told Jon, I need to find something, but I just want to be a mom. And now the next year homeschool happened. And I'm like, well, the Lord was like, here you go, Kellee. This is what you're going to do. So
there you go.
Well, and another success story for you too, Kim, is they are proud of their education.
Well, and that was, you mentioned like Gavin wanting to, go to the ATC and be able to start a career right when he turns 18, right? That's one of the things for our oldest, this is her first year fully homeschooling, is, she's got an entrepreneurial spirit. She's like, I want to take this class. She's taking a graphic design class right now, and she's going to take some other classes later on. But she's like, but I want to take an entrepreneur class and start a business. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like that's so way. Awesome. And she's like, and I don't need calculus, Dad. And so it's like,
Yeah,
those
it's
types of
not
things.
one size fits all,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
kids are gonna have different trajectories. And so being able to help cater their education to where they want to go will make it so there's so much more buy-in. There's
Yeah.
not gonna be the fighting. Well, this is what you want to do, so this is what we have to learn, to get
Yeah.
to there. And they buy into it so much more that way.
Yeah. And well, in this child, she was not a child that fits in the box, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a blessing to bring her home. So
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, we like to end our podcast with one question that, just because we felt like we've become kind of history buffs a little bit. We love learning about history lately.
Or wannabes.
We're
So.
wannabe history buffs. And so we cheat by just asking other people stories from history. And
Okay.
so I would like to know, like, who is one of your heroes from history and why?
Okay. So last year in our co-op, I taught history, and it was the Middle Ages. And my favorite person that we talked to, we devoted a whole 5-week unit to Joan of Arc.
Oh, nice.
And I remember loving her as a child too, because there's not a lot of like girl warriors, through history that you hear of. And it was just so special to be able to teach the kids about this girl who had so much faith in God that she was able to, be a warrior and just fight these battles that like no one thought she could. And she was able to withstand horrible circumstances and still remain faithful and true. And I have a couple quotes of hers that I love. I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this.
Nice.
And I just
That's
think
a good quote.
It's beautiful. I just think like we don't have to be afraid when we know our purpose. And one thing I love about homeschool is being able to help my kids know who they are and what their purpose is and what they're born for. And so that whatever comes their way, they can have courage, they can know who their trust is in, and they can know what kinds of wonderful people through history to look up to. And most of all, to look to God. And then this is the other quote I really like is, one life is all we have, and we live it as we believe in living it. But to sacrifice what you are and to live without belief, that is a fate more terrible than dying. And even though my Christian faith, I do believe that there is something after this life. There is something to be said for just living this life to your fullest, to have something that you stand for. And even if, you may have to sacrifice something to pursue a homeschool education or to pursue something else for you or your family that you believe to be right, it is worth it. Standing up for what you know to be true is so much more important than anything you feel like you might be sacrificing. And God will be with you as you like stand strong in that. And I've experienced that. And all the awkward conversations I might have or the judgments I might receive for the things that I've chosen for my family, it's worth it because I'm, living the way I believe in living my life the way that I believe. And there's a lot of peace that comes from it.
Yeah, I love
that's
that.
way cool.
I love lately I've been the definition of fearing God, it's kind of been in the scriptures lately and as we've been reading, and because before I thought fear, like be afraid of God, and just the awe and the reverence of it's going along with that's who we are really should be worried about pleasing is God. And in homeschool, like you said, we get a walk with him and throughout life, like you say, the past few years we've had some trying things, and it's maybe not the way we pictured it in our mind, but the path God has taken us has been worth it, even though it's been hard. And so,
well, I know God can use like the hard circumstances in this life to bring so much good about, and just the number of families that are homeschooling now that wouldn't have before, political upheaval and pandemics and all of that. Just, it's really beautiful to see because God needs warrior families and he needs families to be close because there's so many things trying to pull families apart, so many things trying to pull children from God. And we just have to stand strong as families for what's right. And it's not always going to be the easiest path, but there are so many resources and so many things to make it doable and make it enjoyable.
Yeah.
I agree. Was it meant to be easy?
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
If you look at history, it's like, I think we have that mindset of like, we'll do this and then life will be comfortable. And it's like, that wasn't the plan. That was never in the plan, you
Yeah, I
guys.
don't remember that ever being in the scriptures that, you'll be comfortable. I can't think of a scripture that says that.
I can't either.
Yeah. Blessed, but not comfortable.
Right. Yeah, we were just going over the Beatitudes, right? And how like it's this upside down world, like blessed are those that mourn, blessed are those that are persecuted, like the things that we would normally look on and be like, that's a bad thing, but that's what God's looking for. He wants to refine us through all of those things. And it's such a beautiful plan and path.
Yeah. That's awesome. Kim, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so fun.
It's
been a good time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Diamond Education Podcast.
You can connect with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook
at Diamond Education, DIMOND, or on our website, diamonded.com.